Okay, I think it looks like we actually hit the real record. That's good. Okay.
This is just take two. It's all
Yeah,
right. This is
yeah,
like
yeah.
Hollywood.
Yeah, this is a real weird feeling of deja
Yeah.
vu. So for everybody that's unaware, this is the O3 Dropcast. As you can see, I do have a different guest here, and we are laughing because this is the second time we've done this. We actually had some technical problems. We were about three quarters of the way
Switch.
through a first game, and
And
then
I was
our
totally
recording
winning.
software.
I was winning,
Oh my god,
clearly.
not even close. Just it was like 40 life to one. She had lethal on board, and I was like, oh no, the recording went bad. Let's do
Mm.
this again. But no, we're giving it the good old college try here, and gonna get this right. But everybody, if you are not familiar with who this is, Max Ferocity, thank you so much for being a guest. Now a two-time guest to the channel.
Yeah, two times. And
Whether
you
we
just
meant for it to
couldn't
be or
resist having
not.
me back right away. So,
Yeah, right when I said, you know what, we need more of this for the guest, and we're gonna go and keep playing. But while I kind of sideboard and get ready, I think you said you started that on your end. Why don't you
yeah.
introduce yourself, kind of who you are in the community, and all of that good stuff for folks.
Yeah. So, hey guys, I'm Max, but some of you know me as Rachel. Feel free to call me whatever at events or online whenever you run into me. I have been playing Flesh and Blood for about 3 years now. I think I just passed my third anniversary of Flesh and Blood. So one of the longest anniversaries in my life. I mean, my marriage that's cool and all, but Flesh and Blood's the big one. And yeah, so if you know me in the community, you probably know me more for my costumes than for my playing. At least I hope you do, because my playing is not a lot to write home about these days. But I am an avid player as well as a cosplayer, so you'll see me at probably a good percentage of bigger OP events, just hanging around. Either acting a fool or looking a fool, depending on if I'm dressed up that day. So yeah, hi.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks for having us. So I did get into the game. Hopefully everything's looking good on your end.
Yep.
I don't know if it's asking for anything. Okay, good.
Yeah,
So
just
we are
ask me
all
where I
good
want
and
to put
set.
my plating.
I was getting nervous. I always get nervous in Talishar when I see that, when it's like one person's connected. I'm like, oh no, what's happening? I'm like, oh no, wait,
No,
next I
no.
actually have to choose something at the beginning. So
Yeah.
yeah, so again, thanks for being on the show. I know one of the things that we like to do is kind of we call folks in the community heroes of the armory. We definitely thought that you were a good fit for this, as somebody that's kind of outspoken in the community, has a good presence. Also, from our understanding, a great just local player. So let's talk a little bit about like your local scene. What's your
Yeah.
primary store? Where do you play? All that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. So my primary store week to week is MinMax Games out here in the Chicagoland area. They're in Addison, Illinois, so a suburb just outside of the city. And I've been playing there for about 3 years now, same amount of time. Right after I started kitchen table playing, one of our first events was going to MinMax for their first armory that they held, welcoming the community as they opened their doors. And they've really leaned into Flesh and Blood since day one, and so have I. So been there the whole time. We've got I think, a close knit community in the Chicagoland region, both in the city downtown as well as the suburbs where we're at. So pretty
Mm-hmm.
active community, and we're always traveling to each other's stores. So that's why I feel like we're just so close that we see each other all the time.
Yeah, I mean, and here I'll let you kind of get started while we
Yeah.
kind of talk through it. But yeah, it is. I mean, MinMax is definitely one of the most well known stores. I think for Fab scene, so it's I think one of those ones that everybody kind of says like, hey, I want to get out there. I want to kind of start playing at the store. I want to kind of see it in person. All that kind of stuff. I know. I got my unbanned Dusk Blade shirt from them down in Tampa. You know, so it's certainly from what I hear at least a good community. And I know we kind of talked about this before, but in terms of what they're doing for the community and your scene, how is the Flesh and Blood scene for where you're at? Do you see it as something that is growing, being stagnant, kind of on the decline? And then kind of what are you all doing to kind of invite new players in and bring them to the game?
Yeah, so MinMax I think has been, and maybe I'm biased because they are my home store and my buds, has been at a lot of the forefront of trying to push Fab in the Chicagoland area in the community, like one of the very first stores to start playing it, carrying it. But also,
Sure.
as you mentioned with your shirt, like they're at all of these big events. It's very rare to not
Mhm.
see them, I think, at least at US events, as one of the vendors out there. And,
Mhm, mhm.
both getting the community rounded up in our area to play at these bigger events, but also, showing up at all these events and doing fun things like the Duskblade shirts, getting everybody psyched up online about things going
Mhm.
on or memes in the community. They would have like these big events, like when I say big events, things like PQs or RTNs, where they'd rent out like hotel ballrooms and conference rooms to make them bigger than you would expect at a store. So really welcoming the whole Chicagoland area, getting people involved. But I think it's also on the player side, and I know we had been talking about this a little before, that a lot of our locals are very into, it being very inviting to new players. So whether
Mhm.
that's loaning out decks, loaning out cards, teaching people when they come to armories. We don't always have opportunities to have like learn to play events or things like that just because we have so many events crammed
Sure.
in week after week. But I think people take it upon themselves in our local community that when somebody shows up, they want to make sure that they don't feel at a disadvantage or that they're not having a good time playing against, maybe these strong or meta decks or expensive decks, that they might be.
Mhm.
So we want to make sure that they're, getting a leg up and that they want to come back. So I think that goes both for min max as well as the people that tend to play there and the whole Chicagoland community as a whole, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it is, while there's some, some games like, let's say, Magic the Gathering, or even things like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, where the scene kind of builds itself. Um, I've always feel like, oh wait, I don't want to play that. I want to pitch that. Okay.
It's
Oh,
I who's
apparently, did I
distracting
have a
you now.
resource? Yeah. See. Now
Turnabout's
it's
fair play.
now I'm like, wait. I was like, what's my resource count?
Yeah.
But uh, no, it's one of those things that, like, I feel like Flesh and Blood is definitely one of those games that is more reliant upon a community member or a good community to bring people in, as opposed to something that just has the name or the background like Magic or Pokemon or things like that. So I very much believe that, the more that we get players like, like yourself, for our scene it was Matt, sent on stream, I think, as week goes by, that kind of brings everybody together, saying like, oh no, come to the store, like come check it out. We'll get you bulk, we'll get you things to kind of get going. And that's always been very, very, interesting to me. I can't imagine a time where, we had, let's say, in Magic, when I played Commander, like, there wasn't a lot of people saying, "Come to the store, come try it out." It was more like, "I'm interested in this. Maybe I'll wander into the store." So, finding communities that sit there and really welcome new players, get them into the game, and moving is always a good start. I know that you sat there and said that you guys primarily focus on CC for that. Like, how do you feel like that is towards a new player? Do you feel like that's intimidating to them? Do you feel like it is something that is easier to teach the game for a new player, or do you kind of do like a mix of CC and then introduce them to something else like Commoner or something like that?
Yeah, so in our area, CC's kind of king. It's what we see pretty much at every store weekly, but there are some stores in the area that do run things like UPF, for those different seasons that they've had, and promotions for UPF. And so
Hmm.
those have been really fun in bringing in casual players. But I think that even our casual players embrace CC. I know we used to do more draft, and more limited type focus,
Hmm.
maybe a year or so back. But I often felt like newer players are more receptive to learning about a specific deck or a hero, even if it's CC and it's a little bit taller than something like Blitz. It was a lot more intimidating for them
Sure.
to come in and have to sit around a table with 7 other people that might know exactly what they're doing, in a draft type
Mm-hmm.
format. So, while I'd love to see more things like Commoner, because my husband and I are really into silly formats, we love
Hmm.
casual formats like Commoner. I still think that people get a good sense for the game and it moves at almost a slower pace a little bit in CC, whereas
Yep.
maybe something like Blitz
Yep.
or Commoner moves pretty quick, and has
Hmm.
like that nuance where if you mess up one turn, it's kind of over in some cases, depending on what they're playing. And so even though we're doing things like CC, I think people's willingness to sit down and really get to know people and say, "Hey, what's your play style like? Did you play Magic? Are you coming from something else? Do you like to play aggro, mid range? Ice? I won't
Mhm.
judge, but are you a blue player?" Um, I think that's really helpful in getting people into it. And as you mentioned with bulk, like we're always shoving bulk into the hands of new players. When somebody comes in, it's their first time. We're like, wait, 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 don't leave, don't leave. When prizing goes out,
Mhm.
because oftentimes like the store will give away some give me packs, even if you didn't win a round, you're new, like here's some packs. People are going to go around the table and say like, here's my bulk, here's some rares that you need. Let's make sure we
Sure.
kit you out. And like I said before, when we were chatting before we had to cut this and restart, was that we're even willing to loan things once we get to know you. Obviously, I mean, I'm not going to hand somebody my cold foil heart, my foundry heart, and say, hey, just go forth
Sure.
and have fun
Sure.
with it. I don't know you yet, but I'm more than willing to grab, even some of the more expensive cards out of my deck and say, if I'm not using them tonight, you're welcome to use them for the night while we're here.
Yeah,
If it's not too crazy expensive, I'm willing to loan out a deck, and I think that a lot of
that makes
people in
sense.
our community are willing to do that.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So let me ask you this question too here while you think about how to
Destroy
beat
it.
me in this game. Yeah, is whenever we think about you, at least in the Flesh and Blood community, we sit there and think about the cosplay side of things and everything that you do. I don't want to sit there and say that you've launched a new channel, because I do know that you started something a little bit before on YouTube, but it definitely took a little bit of a break, and then it seems like you're coming back to it. Tell me about kind of what made you decide to kind of get back into your Pour the Mold channel and start that back up again, and what you plan on bringing to that space and to the community.
Yeah, so I wish I could say I was starting it back up. I don't think I ever really got off the ground with it originally. I started planning this around this time last year, and then I got busy getting ready for Barcelona. LSS sent me out there to play Dash IO, and it was an amazing opportunity. But
Hmm.
obviously, it took up a good amount of my time. That when I announced that channel originally, I thought I'd have that time to work on it. But what really got me
Sure.
back into it was I get a lot of questions from people about, oh, I want to get into cosplay. I have no idea where to start. Can you tell me about this or that? And I'm happy to answer those one off questions and have those chats. I really enjoy it. But I
Hmm.
also thought to myself, like, well, if I can help one person, I can help more people. And even if they don't want to make their own cosplay, I always hear people say, I'd love to see how you make this stuff. How do you go from like
Sure.
behind my shoulder, there's black foam rolls right next to, a completed costume, and so that's really what I want to get out of this, is to show off that crafting, but also show off, um, you know, what does an event look like from my perspective? So do like things like trip reports when I come back. What are the cool things that you could see at events? Because you go there to an event your first time, you might be overwhelmed. Like what do I
Yeah.
sign up for? What do I try? What's commoner?
Sure. Sure. Sure.
and and so I think giving my perspective as I would say like a not hyper competitive player, what are all these other side events that you could do, people you could meet, fun things you could see in an area, gives people a sense that yeah, I don't have to be hardcore, or if I'm hardcore, that's cool
Hmm.
too.
Hmm.
There's things for everybody here.
Sure.
And so that's what I want to get out of that, is to come back to this and say it isn't just about cosplay, it's about the whole community. It's about the things I
Hmm.
see. And I think, as I mentioned before, I don't want to focus on this necessarily, but, we have a growing community of, diversity, people of
Hmm.
all different walks. And, let's just admit it, at the table, of LGS, or not LGS, of TCGs in general, you don't always see like the majority being women. And
Sure. Sure. Sure.
so
Sure. Sure.
I've heard other girls in the community say things like, oh yeah, I wasn't sure if I go to an event, if, I'll feel comfortable by myself, things like that. And I want them to see that Fab is a really friendly, welcoming place, that I have a great time. And
Hmm.
I go to a lot of events alone. And I have been going alone for
Hmm.
like 3 years on and off when my husband can't go. And I had a great time. I always felt safe and welcome, made a ton of friends all over the world, to the point where I feel comfortable just jetting off to anything. And they should too.
Yeah.
So that's really what I'd like to get out of that, is share a little bit of everything that makes up my experience. Sorry, I'm like sitting here timing out Talishar.
No.
I'm stalling. I don't know what to do. You know what I think I'm going to do? I think
No.
I'm going to like hit you for 5. That's what I think.
That works. I mean,
Let's see.
but no, and I'm glad that kind of like as you throw the next beatdown card on me here, uh, that's kind of a chain. Uh, like I'm glad you kind of brought up the idea of like diversity and kind of being a a voice or an individual in the community to kind of promote that. Because again, as somebody that I have a daughter, I have a wife, all that kind of good stuff. That I I being a white like older guy have never really had to sit. Oh gosh, hold on. As if it's choose the action card. I gotta reveal X cards. I gotta reveal one. Here, I'll reveal this. But it's one of those things that like I've never necessarily had to wonder of saying, do I feel safe? Like is this okay? Is this not okay? Uh, and so as you start going to events, and this is something I've always kind of liked about the Flesh and Blood community is it being very outspoken. There's individuals like Kiki, there's individuals like Elaine that make it a priority to make sure that there's a safe space, and that you know people that are minorities, or various different genders, they all feel like this is a game where you can come, you can have a safe time, you can meet individuals that are similar backgrounds to you or understand what you're going through, and just everybody kind of feel welcome. And generally speaking, when we see somebody that isn't quite like that, or somebody that it doesn't have that mentality, that we're able to quickly jump on it and try to correct the problem. So I've always kind of liked that about it.
Yeah, I agree. And if I'm seeming like I'm wandering a little bit here, I think Talishar shut down on
Oh
my end.
no.
Oh no. Oh
Have you
no.
tried to
I don't know
refresh?
if
Have
you
you
can
tried to
get
refresh?
back into it, but I'm gonna try. Let's see if it
The link may still work. If
let
so,
me, yeah, give me one sec. I'm working on it. We can keep
I
chatting, but I'm
believe.
like, oh no,
I
I
believe.
was doing so well. I was doing so well. Not again.
I was gonna say, I was definitely gonna be like, oh no, I'm gonna be on the ropes this
Does
game
it
this
say
whole
claim
time.
victory on your side?
It does say
Inactive.
claim victory on my side. It
Oh no.
it
Oh
shows
no, you're
inve-
gonna
Have
claim
you just tried to
victory.
refresh?
Yeah, and it's gone.
Oh no, and it didn't work. Oh
No,
no.
no.
So
Let me see. I don't think it's gonna let me go like back to a link and re-enter, but
oh, oh, poor
why?
Talishar. Anyway,
Poor
well, while we
Talishar.
figure this out, if not, we could, we can move on without it and just go forward. But I mean, let me ask you this too, and I apologize if you're trying to multitask while answering these
I'm working
questions,
on it. We're good. We're
but
a mech. We can multitask.
but and if you want, I could always make a new link. But let me ask you this question here: is as you are thinking about cosplay and thinking about kind of your background and your history with it, how did you decide like, hey, I want to start doing like cosplay for Flesh and Blood? Like, have you always been into making costumes or creating things, or is this something that was entirely new to you whenever you came to the world of Flesh and Blood?
Yeah, so I've always enjoyed making costumes, but when I say that, I wasn't very experienced at it. It was usually something
Hmm.
like, go down to Goodwill and find some things to splice together and make up my own thing. So
Sure.
I liked making different costumes from video games, D&D, my own characters, for Ren fairs, for Halloween. So that's always been something I've enjoyed, but I fell out of it for a very long time. Probably the last costume I
Hmm.
made
Hmm.
prior to this would have been like college time, and I'm 38 now.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And so for Flesh and Blood, it was just wanting to really get into showing my love of not only the game, but a hero, which was Dash Inventor Extraordinaire, since there's two now. And
Yep.
that's really where I went with that, was wanting to create this hero and kind of feeling a challenge. Because when I said to people, I want to make this, they're like, oh, well, like you mean like you'll put together like a vest and a wig for your hair.
Yep.
And I'm like,
Yep.
no, I want to make the whole thing, armor and everything. And so I always take challenges as like some sort of personal mission and go too far with it.
Sure.
And that was the genesis of that. Um,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I might
Now,
have to. Sorry, go ahead.
no, no, sorry, good, good.
I was gonna say I might have to shapeshift here because Talishar is telling me that another player is in the game, so it's not letting me rejoin the game.
No,
Oh
no worries.
no.
Let's do this while you do it. But so let's think about it this way: is whenever you're sitting here, and I'm going to go back to main menu. I'll just make a new link, and then I'll secretly sneak it to you. But whenever you're sitting here talking about like you know I'm trying to create a costume, or I'm trying to come up with whatever I want to build. Uh, what is that creative process? Is it something that, as you're going through a what's it called? Like a new set or a pack of cards, you just look and see something and go, "Oh my god, you know what? This is it. This is what I want to make. This is what we're going to build." Or is it something that you sit there and really take your time and say, "Okay, I want to do XYZ. Let me try to find something that fits that process." Like, how do you go through that whole creative process?
Yeah, so my creative process is really impulsive. I don't take the skills and fit the costume. I take the costume and fit the
Okay.
skills. So I'll see something and like the neurons activate and I am ready to make it, even if I have no clue how I'm physically going to do that. I
Okay.
mean, the Nitro Mechanoid was a great example of that. I had only ever done one real like intense cosplay, and that was Dash IE. And I said, I'm going to make a giant mech. And I'm pretty sure everybody around me silently laughed because by now they knew to be afraid of me. That like if we laugh at her, she'll actually do it, so we can't laugh. And I said, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to drive 12 hours to this event. I'm going to make it. The only way to get it there is by car. And I'm going to do it. And I was going to
Sure.
do it alone. And then my friend Levi, shout out to Levi Roush for those that do or do not know him, great member of our local community, volunteered to drive with me so I wouldn't end up in a ditch driving like 28 hours round trip to bring this crazy
Oh.
contraption to Baltimore. I think that was like only a year ago, actually, which seems like a
Hmm.
lifetime.
It
But
feels so
yeah,
long ago.
it feels so long ago. I can't believe that that was like my second cosplay, but it was only like a little over a year ago, year and a half maybe.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yep. Yep.
yeah, so it's how my process goes is I see something, I say I want to do it. I don't care if I have the skills. I'm going to research until I figure it out. And if I don't do
Hmm.
it perfectly, well, you know what? Too bad. I'm going to try anyway. And yeah, and that's how it goes. I look back on some costumes now and I'm like, I can't believe that that was what I made. I could do so much better, but I have to stop and be proud of that moment and not where I'm at now.
Yeah, I always think it's kind of funny because when you sit there and say, "Hey," I look back and think like, "Hey, I could have done so much better."
Yeah.
It's for people like me. It's like the first one I saw, it's like, "Oh my god, this is amazing! How somebody did top this," and then it's like the next one, there's smoke and there's lights, and then the next one, it's like the whole giant mechanoid, and then the next thing, it's like, "Oh no, now I'm just Boss," and like it always seems like it's a step up, a step up, a step up. What has been the hardest skill that you've had to develop whenever kind of creating this?
Yeah,
Like,
so
or creating any costume, I guess.
the hardest skill is knowing the questions to ask because if you've never done a lot of this before, you're not really going to know where to start necessarily. And it's
Okay.
just like a lot of things like programming or any other skill. How do I get my Google foo, working to
Mhm.
actually know like what is the
Mhm.
question I need to be asking to resolve X problem? So that's how I tackle every cosplay is I break it down into a project plan like a big old nerd. I'm a project planner by trade day to day. And I say,
Mhm.
what do
Mhm.
I know what to do? What do I not know what to do? What's the hardest thing in this whole build? And how do I learn it? How do I ask the question? So, like, a good example is like I had to learn to program lighting. Um, I've never done any
Sure.
programming in my life. So, what is the code language that's easiest to learn for this, or the most common one? What has good examples? What has good videos out there? And I just buckle down and study. Most of my stuff is twice the time in planning than it actually is in making it. To be honest.
Sure. I mean, yeah, the planning I think would be kind of a real nightmare because like I can't even imagine the thought process or the work that goes behind it where you sit there and say, "Okay, this is what I need to do. Now, let me just look at every small intricate detail of this card to figure out how do I best represent this." I mean, it's as somebody that looks at your stuff and goes, "Oh my god, this is amazing," you got everything covered. How much detail work do you sit there and look at and go, "I have to let this go if I want something to be done on time." Is it a lot, or do you sit there and go, "Okay, you know what? I like I'm not going to give up until this is 100% accurate."
Yeah, so I lean more towards the crazy side if I'm not going to give up till this is accurate, but there are things that get dropped over time. And sometimes it's because I
Okay.
realize it wasn't the right way to do something. Most of my costumes
Mhm.
are pretty down to the nth level of detail, honestly. Like when I think about behind me, I've got like
Sure.
the Macropotent sitting behind me right now. Um, and there's
Mhm.
really not much on that suit that I could point to and say that, yeah, I missed that from the artwork. It's just more about how
Mhm.
you interpret it and what path you take to accomplish it. But yeah, sometimes
Okay.
stuff gets left on the floor, on the cutting floor, and that's just what happens. You go through and you say like, that just isn't going to work when I have to sit down at a table. you know, I have to be able
Mhm,
to
mhm,
physically
mhm.
bend over at some point. I have to drop this. So yeah, for the most part, I try to be highly accurate to the highest degree. But yeah, sometimes it's less about time and more so, yeah, that's not practical or real in real life.
I hear you. I hear you. So let's talk again. Like, as somebody that is well versed in the cosplay scene, and as somebody that has entered numerous competitions, whenever you are thinking about what makes a good cosplay competition, what makes a bad one, what do you want them to expand upon and improve? What do you want them to maybe kind of strip away or take away from it? What would be, your perfect cosplay competition in terms of how they should be built out, how they could be more welcoming to new players, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I think the biggest barometer of a good cosplay contest is that everybody, no matter what level or whether they won something or not, walks away feeling like they were respected, appreciated, and they got a fair shot.
Hmm.
And there's really two elements
Hmm.
to this.
Hmm.
First off, is everybody gets their time in the spotlight, and that's both behind stage and on stage. Behind stage, it means that everybody gets their costume inspected. And that can be intimidating, but it's also good feedback for people. It also lets them know that you're looking at every detail.
Hmm.
I've been a judge before, I was a judge at Barcelona, and we didn't have a lot of time to do those inspections. So I was trying to kind of do it on the floor too, as people were walking past me throughout the day and we were stopping to
Mm,
chat. Me getting a look and asking about their
sure.
costume. But that's the important part. It tells them, I appreciate what you do. I want to know more about it. Tell me your favorite detail. Tell me your hardest detail, things like that. Um, but
Hmm.
also that, we're looking for quality. We're looking for fairness. We're assessing things. We're making sure that you didn't buy stuff and just bring it. Not that there's a lot of flesh and blood things at Spirit Halloween. Probably someday, someday. Um, but that's first part. Second part is in accomplishing that is putting people on the right footing. And right now, the way contests are done is that everybody is on equal footing, which sounds great in theory, but is it? Equality isn't always equity, and vice versa. And what I mean by that is if you have top eight prizing and 30 people show up and you're
Hmm.
all in one bucket being judged against each other, well, who's going to
Sure.
win every time or come out in the top eight? Probably people with more experience. Um,
Yeah.
and so, how do you get up to that level? Do you feel discouraged if you go to like 5 competitions and walk away empty handed? So I think the way that
Hmm.
LSS has currently helped resolve some of that is to have participation prizes, which is awesome because they are worth something and they are really cool, these cold foils that they have for people. So people always walk away with
Sure.
something
Sure.
in their pocket. But part two is where they could improve and where I'm hoping to see them go. And I think they might. I can't say for sure. I don't work there. Is to get to a point where we're like other competitions that have levels, where if you're a beginner and it's your first costume, you're up against other beginners. If you're a novice, you have a couple awards, you're up against other novices, and etc. into masters category. And that means that sometimes
Hmm.
masters and novices are going to walk away with nothing when they would have walked away with the top eight before.
Yeah.
But it also means the same people aren't just
Yep.
scooping up prizes. So even if it means that I have to walk
Hmm.
away with nothing one day, that's okay because it means that people are encouraged to keep coming back and trying for those next levels. And it forces them into the next
Hmm.
levels as they continue to win their levels. And I think everybody will
Hmm.
walk away a little bit happier in that regard. So hoping to
Yeah.
see something like that. Now, at the end of the day, in these types of competitions around the world, you always have a best in show, which would be like I would say like the tailor. Um,
Sure.
and that's all categories are still equal again in that. So typically what you'll see at a lot of shows is the master still wins, which makes sense, right? The best in show
Hmm.
is probably going to be
Sure.
the pro
Sure.
or somebody. Um,
Sure.
but at least people are not all taking and sweeping the top eight and leaving people empty handed. So
That
I
makes
think that
sense.
that's what I'd like to see going forward is that, we're still respecting like masters divisions and such, but everybody gets a little bigger piece of
Hmm.
the pie together. Would be nice.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm
Now
leaving
let
you
me ask this
hanging on the
question too. Is
gameplay over here, getting passionate
no,
about
no, you're good.
contests. I'm being boring on the gameplay front. Let
Hey,
me
hey,
let me throw some stuff at you.
I'm happy to wait. If Talishar isn't, that's Talishar problem. I'll throw Talishar aside for a good
I'm still
conversation any
moving the
day.
mouse around while I'm
But
talking. I can do that much. I think you're really going to like this
but
move here. So
oh
Oh
that's a card I
no.
haven't seen in like a game and a half, and now I'm real sad.
Uh,
But let me ask this question. So, as you're getting a million action points here, uh, when you're talking about these different categories and these, oh god, six. Let's just throw this down now. Like as we're talking about these different categories, what would constitute in your mind a beginner versus a novice versus like an expert? Is it something that you think is just time? Like, hey, after you've entered two competitions, you're now a novice, or is it something that is based on skill level? Like, so for example, me, I don't have an artistic bone in my body that I could do a million costumes and they would all look like I just took like, garbage bags and stapled them together because
oh, don't sell
it's
yourself
I don't
short.
have
Come
that
on.
level. Oh, you trust me. If the day ever comes, you'll fully understand. You'll be like, Chris, I get it. Please don't ever disrespect my craft again. Like it is.
No.
It's one of those things that I always look at it like, what would qualify somebody to be a beginner versus an expert? Is it like, oh, if you've won one, maybe you become an expert, or what are your thoughts there? Because again, I look at like you said, like your first costume. And to me, I'd be like, oh my God. Like if I was a beginner in that category, I'd be like, no way, no way. This is her first time doing this. Clearly we got a ringer. You,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
Yeah, so this is actually a common thing that you will see at big competitions. I'm talking about like things at like Comic-Con. Um,
Sure.
and so the way that there's kind of like everything's a little different everywhere in the world and every contest you go to, but I would say a generally accepted principle, I'm getting into my accounting speech here, would be using something like a combination of wins and experience. And what I mean by that is, I'm just going to use an
Okay.
example. If I were to go do a contest at like a Gen Con or a C2E2 or a Comic Con,
Okay.
I would probably be considered a novice, somewhere in the middle. And the reason is that while I have
Mm.
won many awards with Fab, I have five or six, well, six tailors now. That they wouldn't consider that a major award, because it's a small competition,
Okay.
it's niche. They wouldn't consider that a major award. But what they would say is you've had six of those grand champions in this niche area. We'll kind of distill those down into one or two big wins and you'll be a novice. But they also
Okay.
look at things like time on. So if you've been cosplaying for like a year and a half, 2 years, they probably consider you a novice, somewhere in the middle. So I think really
Okay.
what should delineate that for Fab would be, if you've won a tailor, you clearly are not a beginner. So right off the bat, I would say if you've won a tailor before or you won any competition or
Sure.
major thing, you're not a beginner. You might be a novice. You might be a master's. If you've won more than
Hmm.
one of these top prizes, then you're probably in masters for what we do. But in the big world
Sure.
out there, it would take winning several and having
That's
let's just say
interesting.
5 or more years to be a master's, and then pro is you get
Yeah.
paid for it, which we don't have anybody right
Hmm.
now. I don't think. I certainly don't get paid for it. I wish. Let's see. Oh no, you're
No,
hitting me.
I get it. Like I'm attempting to. That's for sure.
You're
But
tempting.
no, like it's actually kind of
Mhm.
interesting you say that because again, it's not something that like I realized that there was such a well, like I'm sure it did exist and just never crossed my mind. Like a clear, like such a clear, well spelled out like definition of like no, this is what they look for. So that's always kind of been interesting to me. But when we're talking about kind of like hey, actually being in an event or uh do I want to create a figure now? Actually having that opportunity to, create a costume, go to something. Bryce and I on the show, we always joke that we have something called polite anxiety, where we'll see somebody, even if it's somebody that we know and we've interacted with, that if they are doing something or in a costume that we're like, or I won't speak for him, I'll speak for myself. I always go, I see Max there. I am not going to go bug her because I'm sure she's had a million people say, "Oh
No.
my god, this is great. Can I get a picture?" And you also probably want to interact with people like that you don't see often. So, like when you're at an event, do you feel comfortable people coming up talking to you about the costume? Do you sit there and say like, "Hey, if you see me in a group, leave me alone." Like what are your thoughts of people that meet these individuals that are cosplayers or potentially streamers or people like that from the community. like what are your thought processes of being approached to talk about the craft or talk about kind of what you do?
Well, first of all, we love it. I would say the only exception to that, and it's a mild exception, is if I'm sitting there with my wig askew, I look like I'm sweating like a hog, and I've got half a sandwich jammed into my gaping maw of a mouth, then probably not the best time to come up and say, "Can I get a picture?" and just start snapping. But really,
Sure,
we
sure,
do love
sure.
being approached. We want people to approach us, and that's not just to say we're, big attention gatherers or anything like that.
No,
But
I
it's
get
really
it.
it's really complimentary, first of all. Like, yeah, we spend a lot of time on these. Like, I think
Hmm.
Macropoint was like 400 hours for me. So having people come up and say, I
Oh
love it. I
wow.
want to hear more about it. That's my number one question I love when people ask is like, tell me about this or how did you do this?
Hmm.
Like, because it shows more than just passing interest, that they respect the
Hmm.
work that went into it and want to know more. So it's very complimentary, but also we're fans too. I'm a player as well. Like, I want to
Hmm.
chat with you. I would not have so many friends in this community. We would not be talking right now if people didn't come up and talk to me, whether that's online or in person, about my costumes. I don't
Sure,
care.
sure, sure. Yep. I mean, yeah, and like I said, that's always like the biggest thing. Like I've heard people say that all the time. Like is like, oh my god, it like is my first major event, and I see so and so, but I don't want to be like a like quote unquote like fangirl over them and be like, oh my god, like I know you, and so like if I see somebody a lot of times, like I'll just like, hey, how you doing? I'll just keep walking. Like I'm like, you're doing your thing. I get it. Like I appreciate what you do. Thanks for the community. Until I kind of develop like kind of like a relationship or like a friendship with some folks. Like that, like even we joke about like Anna, who is part of the community, does all the crafts and things like that.
Hmm.
She went to a lot of our local events, things like that. But even like the first couple times I met her, I was like, okay, I'm not gonna bug you. Like you're here to play. It's fine. Like I like your crafts. I always think it's fun what you do. Like and and it's great. Like she's a great person. Like I got one of her. Like I got a little collection of Fab stuff. Like I got like my little Olympia bookmark she made out of metal for me and like mailed it to me for I think it was my birthday. Like it's great. So I mean, to me, like I like that's always my biggest fear is like I don't want to be a pest to the person that is here to do what they want to do as well. Uh so
Nah, you're not a
let's see, hold
pest.
on.
None of you guys are pests. As long as you stay respectful, which
Yeah.
you always have. Everybody I've met always has. I've never had anybody, I'll just state this right
Oh,
now. I've
thank you.
never had anybody be disrespectful to me personally in person.
Hmm.
So first of all, I say, don't touch. I know you know that. A lot of people know that, but
Yeah,
if you
fair.
want to touch something on the costume, you might be able to ask, but be careful about that. People put a lot of work in. Be respectful of their
Hmm.
time, of what you're asking about touching. And otherwise, I think things are pretty good. I will say, the only negative I've ever had, I don't even know if I've ever admitted this, so you're getting the scoop on a show,
Oh
was
man.
nobody has ever said anything directly to my face, come up and said anything inappropriate. But once they figured out that
Hmm.
Phil is my husband, so if you guys,
Hmm.
any of you guys out there know Phil, walking around, tall guy, dark hair,
Super
glasses
great
with me
guy.
sometimes. Oh,
Yep.
thank you. I think it's great too. um, he has had, and more than one, unfortunately, interaction where, somebody has been just trying to be cheeky or playful and asked something along the lines of, how often does she wear the
Mm,
costumes for you? And that's not
uh,
okay. And that's not cool.
creeps.
And it's a
No.
little creepy and it made him uncomfortable. He's like, think that's my wife,
Yeah.
respect her. And I've never talked
Yeah.
about it before now. This happened back at Barcelona, I think, when he got that. And he's gotten it before then
Mm.
too. And so just, everyone out there, if you're making comments like that, you may be thinking you're just joking and being
Don't be a
playful, and
creep.
don't be a
Yeah.
creep, whether it's to the cosplayers directly or to anybody else talking about that cosplayer. So be
Yeah.
respectful out there. Otherwise, I've not
Just
had an
general
issue.
general life advice.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, no.
that's good. I mean, yeah, like I'm glad that's relatively minimal, but I guess and I guess there'll always be creeps out there, which
There
is
will
sad to
be,
say,
and
but I
honestly,
mean,
so much less than what I've seen at a normal, like at a convention, an anime convention or
good.
something. Like the
Yeah.
community here is so 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 respectful that I was shocked when I even heard that. He was like, I almost didn't want to tell you about it, but
Yeah.
one of our other friends was there to hear it. And he was like, I know they would tell you. So he's like, I'm going to tell you. He's like, that a person
Yeah.
said this. And I was like, I
Yeah.
respect that you told me. And then I
Yeah.
said, what'd you say to them? And he was like, be cool.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, that's smart. I mean, and and the one thing that you brought up too that is kind of nice when you sit there and say like, hey, when you're approaching somebody that's put in countless hours on this, is like the whole idea of like just don't touch. Like I think the first
yeah.
time I met you was in Columbus, and you had that big old hammer,
Oh,
and
yeah,
you were like,
yeah.
hey, I'm gonna go play.
Throttle.
Can I put it behind the green tree booth? And we're like,
Yes.
yeah. And I'm like, okay. And like we're all like,
Oh,
don't
you guys are so
break
worried
it.
about like touching it. I
And
was like,
somebody
play
came,
with it. It's fine.
yeah. And, yeah,
uh,
and like somebody came up and was like, hey, can I get a picture with that? Like she said it's okay, and we're like, no, you go over there and you make her stand up and wave to us and give us a thumbs up. Like we are not handing this out because we do not want to be the ones that have to explain.
yeah.
Oh
No,
yes,
no.
like we're sorry the the event hasn't started, but you have now one less hammer because we just gave it out to people to that photo op with,
I really
because
appreciate
because
that
like a
you
lot of it
guys
like
respected it.
yeah, well, and like a lot of it is like you don't realize until like you do hold something that like somebody like you makes. It's like, oh no, this feels a little fragile. Like
Yeah.
it looks big and beefy and that, but it's like no, this is like very light. Like this is like foam potentially at the end of the day. Oh no.
Oh no. Is there
Uh,
something in your hand you don't want to offer me
some
as tribute?
choosing less than or equal to X, and so it has to be less than or equal to 2, right? 2 cards.
I believe so.
Oh no. Okay, I think I should be okay, but just in case, we'll show that and we'll show that. Okay, good. I don't have to block with either of them. Okay, we're
No.
gonna eat it all. But uh, it is, I'm always so worried. Like I can't even imagine somebody that would just be like, oh, I'm gonna go up and just like yank on this part of your
Grab that.
costume to see what it is. Like,
Yeah.
no, it's like, please, like it's
It's
terrifying.
like pulling on Santa
But
Claus's beard in front of the
no,
children and freaking them out.
yeah, yeah, like, and to me, it's like maybe it's just me, but like I can't even imagine like that mindset, like going through and being like, you know what,
Yeah,
this
touching
is the
people's stuff.
move, like just to walk up to somebody and yank on something that they've worked countless hours on, you
Yeah.
know.
More
Now,
so
like,
what happens is people putting their arms around you, like, and that's natural. I don't mean in a creepy way. Like
mm,
I do it all the time, like with my friends, or
yeah,
people that come up to me. I'm like, yeah, let me throw my arm around you. And I have to be careful about that too. Cause people come up to me when I'm in cosplay and they're like, can we get a picture? And they'll stand next to me and I'll
yeah,
do the whole like, hey, and then I remember, well, it's cool, not cool for me to touch either. Am I fine putting my arm around you? Like, oh yeah. And they get so
yeah,
excited. They're
sure,
like, yes, yes. But I've had people before in excitement, not in creepiness, throw their arm around me for a picture,
sure.
like back at San Jose, and somebody actually broke a shoulder piece on Dash IE before the contest. I had to run back to
Oh
the hotel
no,
room and fix the wire. And they
oh
didn't mean
no,
anything by it. They were a very kind person and we're still friends, but
yeah,
this is my first time meeting this person. But they were just so exuberant and excited. They were there with their team and they're just like, let's
yeah,
get a team picture. And they were playing Dash and they wanted to throw their arm around my shoulder. And they didn't just think about like how delicate
sure,
that
sure,
could
sure.
be. So
No, that makes sense. Now,
yeah.
when you keep bringing up Dash IE and these old kind of costumes and everything that you've worked on, if you could go back, like again, you've gathered all the skills, all of the
Yeah.
knowledge, and everything that you have today. If you could go back in time and change one thing about your prior costumes, or your journey as a whole, what would be that thing that you would change and why?
Well, I have a lot of things that I would change about the costumes themselves, but that's all the benefit of hindsight is 2020. I do in my little book of cosplay ideas
Sure.
that I've been waving around lately, actually have a couple of costumes in here that I want to
Hmm.
remake of my old costumes because they're either damaged or I could do
Okay.
them better. So, expect that at some
Hmm.
point,
Hmm.
hopefully in the next year or two, you're going to see some, like probably only one or two, but old favorites come back in a better way, just improved.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
but
Okay.
but things that I would change as far as wow, that is a big dawn blade. Okay. I just look back at the screen like, no.
Still
That
no
is a
counters.
big
Still no
dawn blade.
counters. You're holding it off.
Ooh. I'll finish this thought and then I will address this
Pay no attention.
because I think I'm holding a handful of
Say
reds
pay no
here
attention to the big shiny sword.
without resource. Um, yeah, pay no attention to the shiny sword getting thrust right through your face. Yeah, anything I would change though, besides the costumes themselves, or having more skill to do them now, There's not a lot. I
Mhm,
guess maybe sometimes I wish I would have taken things easier. And what I mean by that is I've made a lot in 2 years.
mhm,
There's a very large volume of costumes. And when you
mhm,
actually look at it,
mhm,
I make a costume like every other month and like at a competitive level usually.
mhm,
And it's caused me
mhm, mhm.
to neglect family and friends. And, I've had 2 weeks
Yeah.
off right now. I'm actually transferring jobs starting next week to a new job. And I had a
Mhm.
little bit of a break between that. And
Nice.
during this time, it gave me time to reconnect with family. I just had lunch with my mom, and I'm like, wow, when's the last time I'm seeing these people?
Mhm.
Because I'm so deep in the sauce here, And
Yeah.
I
Oh,
think
I
I
believe
need to
it.
slow down a little, because just like it's like competitive play for anybody that's doing that and grinding too hard,
Mhm.
you can burn out and you can lose what's important in
Yeah.
life. So I'm having this kind of like existential moment of like, I love all of this. I'm so passionate about it. I want to do it nonstop all the time, 24/7. But is
Mhm.
that fair to my husband who has to deal with the wreck downstairs that you can't see right now? Or, my parents not getting to see me as much? It's not. And so everything in life is
Yeah.
balance, whether it's play, whether it's cosplay, whether it's anything.
Mhm.
Speaking of balance,
Now,
back to this huge sword.
like
Continue with your question.
yeah, no, 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 no. So so when you're talking balance and kind of wanting to make sure like, hey, you're getting enough time or you're getting to kind of do the other things in life that you want to do is because your designs are so complex and because you put in so many hours, do you ever struggle with a feeling of I have to keep one upping what I did before? Like of like, oh, I've done this, now people expect smoke that comes out of like, every costume. And now I've done lights or now I've done like or is it just a I'm gonna do whatever feels like it fits, regardless of if I think creatively it's only on the same level or whatever the case may be.
Stop personally attacking me with these questions. I'm messing with you. No, it's honestly, it's this existential crisis. I talk out loud to my husband all the time, and he was like, it's a hobby. You can do things for fun. And so, a really great example of this was Findel's Fighting Spirit. I wanted to make it for Tampa. I wanted to make it for a long time, but it wasn't good enough to go to a competition. I mean, anything's good enough to
Hmm,
go to
hmm.
competition. I don't want to discourage people in here. Max
Sure.
Ferocity said these types of
Yeah.
costumes aren't good enough. No, no, no. I'm just saying, like, how people will judge me is a perception of myself. If I don't bring something that
Sure.
outdoes the Macropotent next at the next competition, are people going to boo me? Nobody's going to boo me, but like in my head, are they judging me? Are they thinking I'm less than or that I'm washed up? And that is
Hmm,
a feeling for me of like every costume has
hmm.
to be crazier than the last. And there is a little bit of actual pressure with that too. People don't mean it this way. They're excited. But
Hmm.
leading up to every
Yeah.
single major event, I get messages like in the weeks leading up from several different people, close friends, acquaintances. What do you bring in? I know it's going to be crazy. Oh, it's going to be so wild. Oh, I can't wait to see it. Or they're disappointed if I'm
Uh,
not making an event. And they mean it in a good way. They're hyping me, and I really love that. But it's also a lot of pressure, you know, um, sitting
yeah,
there and,
I
and
believe
feeling
it.
like, oh God, like what if it doesn't live up to their expectations? So yeah, I do feel sometimes like I've backed myself a little bit into a corner of my own
Hmm,
making. Um,
hmm,
and so it's hard to get to do these fun ones that I want to do. And so Finals Fighting Spirit was like a palate cleanser for me. I made it for me,
hmm.
and I made it for an event that had no
Yep.
cosplay contest or event, and it felt so good to just
Yeah.
focus and do
What
it. And
and it
yeah,
turned out awesome.
thank you.
It
I
it
was
turned
worried
out
people would hate
really,
it and
really
be like,
awesome. I
that's not
mean,
Max's quality, or that's not a mech thing. But I got a lot of great
yeah.
response over it, so it was fun.
It's actually funny, like it's actually funny, like as you're kind of talking about that. Like I have a daughter, not she's not like into card game. Well, she likes playing games, but again, she's 8 years old, so not quite flesh and blood kind of level of reading skills and comprehension and all of that. But whenever I go to these events or whenever I sit there and I see something like if you put out a new cosplay, a lot of times like I'll show her and I'll be like, oh my god, check out what this person made, and she's like, oh, that's really cool. Like so it is kind of like exciting, like even just being able to share that with like people outside of the community or like my daughter, like stuff that you've done and be like, hey, this is what daddy's involved with, but I don't do this, but check this out. Like if you ever come to an event, you may see like, you may see Max or you may, see Carolina or something like that. That really puts all his time and effort. Like it, to her, it's just like, oh my god, it's like Halloween every day. This is sweet, But like, I always think that that's kind of a cool aspect or a cool thing to kind of consider. And if you ever are like concerned, like you go to an event and like I'm there and you're like, Chris, I don't know, like this cosplay, I don't feel like it's living up to par. Let me know. I will go like roll in leaves and then just come back and be like, I'm Florian. And now here's Max. And they'll be like, oh my God, it's so much better. So like we can make it work. Like now and when we're talking about the complexity and you sitting there saying like you always have to like feel like you're trying to improve or push yourself. l- Let me ask the question, do you, with the understanding that you are the type of person that likes to push the boundaries, find a way to incorporate something new, what is the next skill or a next skill that you're interested in kind of learning or picking up, of saying I want to incorporate welding into my designs, or I want to incorporate 3D printing,
Oh man.
XYZ, like
Yeah.
what would be one skill that if you could pick it up you would love to try to do?
Well, I recently did pick up one recently, so I'll kind of use that as my answer because it's very new to me. I've been picking up leatherworking recently, and I mean like full on
Okay.
like tooling of leather, making leather armor, things like that,
Oh, that's
from
pretty
scratch
cool.
as a whole hide. So, sorry to my vegetarian vegan friends out there, but I've been getting into that. So that was one thing I wanted to pick up that I've started doing. But I would say another one that I want to get better at, like, is my 3D design. So I've been doing 3D printing for pretty much actually every costume I've done. And I got into more of the
Okay.
design space of it pretty much after my first costume, but I'm not great at it because I don't have the time to just really dive deep. And
Hmm.
that would be one area that I'm really constantly trying to improve and make more of each costume 3D printed. Now, I don't think I'll ever get to or even want to get to the point where I like make a whole suit of armor 3D printed, because trying to get
Hmm.
that fitted to my body, woman's curves, things like that is a lot harder and a lot less comfortable than foam. It's very pinchy, I can tell you that.
Mm.
But I'd like to get better at
Okay.
sculpting and being able to do like the reliefs like I did on my Hala helmet, whereas I did those with actually hand molded clay. I'd like to be able to do that
Hmm.
in 3D printing. It's just a different way of doing it, which is cool. But yeah, I would say
Hmm.
that's one area I feel like weak on, that I'd like to get better at the design aspect.
Hmm. Now, like when you're sitting there saying like areas that you're weak on or want to get better in the design aspect and things like that, if well, I guess I was gonna say if I'm a new cosplayer, but as somebody that's never done it before in their life, a very new one, what would be a skill or a good place to start? I hate this. Um, what would be like what would you say? Hey, look, if you're really trying to get into this and you're really trying to get moving or get started with cosplay as a hobby, or even just something just to learn or a new skill, what would be the recommendation? Like I know we just did Camp Green Tree, and Dex put on like a basics to cosplay and kind of talk to some people there. But what would be like
Yeah.
Max's ABCs of you know tackle this first, tackle this second, and then go here if you want to
Yeah.
start really getting into this space?
Well, this is where I plug my channel, which will eventually have tutorials that we're going to start from beginner. But until then, you guys, because that is what I want to get out there, is be like ABCs of like Max's ABCs of what are like the 10 things I would want in my
Yeah.
workshop, if I were a beginner. Like, because I made a lot of mistakes. I spent a
Okay.
lot of wasted money, on things I didn't need or didn't
I
end up
believe it.
liking. And I think that's like a
Hmm.
lot of hobbies if you go too hard on it. But what I would say is like the best place to start until that's up and running. It is up and running, but till more videos get out there, is look up
Hmm.
some of the best cosplayers out there, like names that come to mind. And these are both male and female cosplayers. Uh, Kamui Cosplay is incredible. She's out of Germany and she does tons and tons of tutorials and books. She was where I started in learning foam working, and her
Okay.
her materials are so approachable and a lot of it's free out there. She's amazing, just incredible and
Hmm.
an inspiration. Another one that I would say is another big one would be, if you're into 3D printing, Frankly Built. He does like all the Iron Man suits and
Hmm.
everything. So if you're into that tech side and you
Oh,
want to
okay.
learn more about that, he is just such a cool
Sure.
individual. He seems so nice. One of my friends personally knows him and says just the greatest guy. So I would point over there, but really just go on YouTube and put what you're trying to do. It's all about going back to asking the question to say, I want to make a foam gauntlet. Go into YouTube. I want to make a foam gauntlet or how to make a EVA foam gauntlet.
Hmm.
That is where I would start,
Hmm.
honestly, is
Hmm.
just watch as many videos as you can, absorb. Adam Savage has a lot of fun videos. His are less tutorial and more fun, but they get you into, the zone
Okay.
of creative thinking. And of course, who doesn't love Mythbusters
Sure,
back
sure,
in the
sure.
day? Things like that. Or Lost Wax Studios was another one because they do a lot of steampunk. So there's a lot of good ones out there. YouTube is your friend. There are so many
Okay.
people that have treaded that path before you that want to help you learn.
Yeah. No, I think it makes a lot of sense, and oh gosh, do I eat it? I think I just eat it. Um, whenever I sit there and I'm trying to think about like what to do. I mean, it's funny of like you think about everybody that kind of came well before the age of YouTube. I mean, you
Yeah.
know,
What did
we
we
talked
do
about this
before
before
then?
recording. Like, neither of us were like 20 years old, and like it's funny. Like, I have kids, and we'll sit there and talk about like, hey, learn things. Like, just look it up online. Like, didn't you just? I'm like, no, you couldn't. Like, it
You could not.
exists. Like,
Hey, we
you
used
just
to
had to
print
figure it
maps
out.
to go
And
places, okay? So, kids.
my my daughter always asks me things like, you were around, were you around before cars? I'm like, no, Evelyn, there were cars. I swear, like I'm not that old. There were definitely cars when I was a kid.
Smart Alec.
But yeah, it's the
Oh.
worst. But like it's funny because I feel like you got there's some people like, okay, I'm gonna dive into it, and they go real like head first into like the deep side of things and the hard side of things, and don't always say, hey, look, here's the ABCs or here's the beginning. So I think that's really cool that you are going to try to promote that and say, okay, look, learn from me. Here's what I've done. Here's what I've built. This is the kind of the basics, or this is the best building ground. So like, I love to hear that is certainly coming. And I know like I'll be checking it out if for no other reason than, hey, my daughter wants to be XYZ for Christmas. And I go, I can't find that costume. Can we make part of it and do that? Like, that'll be cool.
Yeah.
Like,
I hope
or God,
everybody
my
gets
like my
something out
son.
of it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like even if you just sit there and say like, hey, look, here's the principles of how to apply to a non cosplay kind of like hobby of like these are the steps that I followed for this hobby. Like, I'm sure there'll be, as you said, something out of it. Uh, Let me ask this question too. Like, understanding, like you said, like, hey, I've spent a lot of money or I've wasted a lot of money trying to learn this. If we took all of those types of factors away, like time, money, storage space, all the other struggles, um, what would be? Ooh, do I want to pay for bigger? You know what? One, two, no. I want to do this. This. Sorry, let me think. And this. Okay. Uh, if you sat there and said, okay, time's not like an issue, money's not an issue, storage space isn't an issue, and you have every tool imaginable to you, like in your workshop here, what would be a flesh and blood cosplay that or card that you would like to kind of recreate or build something around?
If I had the world.
Yeah,
um
if somebody
yeah.
handed you a blank check and like a air hanger warehouse to build and store
Wow.
it all.
So it would actually be, and this doesn't mean it's not currently on my book list here. Um, but the way
Hmm.
I would go crazy doing it would be Ocilio. Um, and when I say Ocilio,
Okay.
I think I'm doing an Ocilio costume at some point next year, and I have my ideas around how I want to do it.
Oh
But
wow.
I have some wild ideas. Um, and outside of an airplane hangar and $1 million in free time, I don't think I'll be able to make it to that extreme. So I would say Ocilio, just because I think it's the wildest one where you could get just really insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's other mech
I
ones that are crazy, but I can do them in my house. So
yeah. Like I just keep trying to think of like, oh my god, like if so, like how would somebody pull off an Acilio? Like how
yeah,
would we even make that happen? Like and it's funny to me because like I could even see like as you were like answering it, kind of like the gears turning in the head of going like, let me see if I could do this. Like this would be kind of like that whole concept or is just kind of amazing to me of just this is a card that most people would look at and be like, you could never do a Cilio. He's floating in the air or and like massive and like I think like in the card they showed it and like just like those little tiny people like shadows. It's like, oh, but you're like, no, I think we could make this work. Like here's the things that like I'd have to do.
Yeah,
But
no, I think so. I think it would be
when
kind of
we're
crazy.
oh, I believe it. I believe it. It'd be real fun to pull off though. I will say that. Now, if we were like understanding that kind of mech is the main thing that you're known for, what other classes do you think would be the most fun to kind of design around?
As far as you mean for cosplay, the most fun ones to design?
Yeah, yeah, like just
Um,
any class, any like. Oh, I
hang
think the
on.
Warriors would be fun, or I think Rangers would be a
Yeah.
blast. Like,
So for me, I've been getting really, really deep into warrior. So I do have
okay,
another warrior build planned probably for first quarter of next year, I think, maybe second quarter. And it'll be kind of a
awesome.
continuation of what I've been doing. So I've done Hala, I've done Minerva,
Okay,
and I have one plan for
mm-hmm.
next year that I am very, very excited for. And I think you'll enjoy it. So that's all I'm going to say.
I what
Yeah.
I will
Um,
always support any kind of warrior creativeness. Like, Dory kind of being my go-to is always. Oh, hold on, this scares me. If you have a boom, oh, you do have boom grenade. Okay, see, I was like, you can get a boom grenade off the top. I
I
didn't even
think
see there
you've
was
got
one
me
on
dead to
board.
rights
Okay,
here,
hold
though. I think
on.
I'm pretty dead.
Let's do this. But like now, counterpoint. What would be the hardest or the worst card to make? Like if somebody said, Max, I want you to make this, what would be the one that either you're least excited to make or the one that you just go, I had like this would just be like an absolute nightmare to have to figure out.
Hmm. I mean, probably a Cilio, which is I think I still want to do it because I'm crazy. But no, the worst one to make, the worst one would probably be Arclight Sentinel.
hmm
I think because it's like again similar problem. It's like this
Yeah.
completely formless, gigantic being, like that's the size of a building.
Yeah.
I think that would be probably the worst to make because I'm always striving for like perfection or accuracy, and I think it would drive me
Understandable.
crazy. I could come up with fun takes on it. Like my Acilio take that I have two ideas sketched down right now, and they're both completely different takes on it.
Okay.
And neither one of them
Okay.
is the size of a building, I will tell you that. And neither one of them is super literal. That's why I'm kind of excited about them. They're very artistic takes on it. So if I do end up doing it, I think
Okay.
people are going to be like, oh, that's not like what Max usually does, but I think it'll be fun.
hmm
So yeah, Arclight Sentinel would be
hmm
I think my answer.
Uh, now, what about like so? I know in uh, let's do let's for okay. Like so, like I know, like again in Tampa, I saw like you and Carolina basically kind of collab together. Each came with a similar take on uh, Finals Fighting Spirits design. If you let's see where this if you basically had the opportunity to collab with anybody either within or outside of the flesh and blood space in terms of cosplay or costume design or anything like that, who would you consider or want to collab with and why?
Who would I want to collab with in Flesh and Blood or outside of Flesh and Blood? Um, I would say I would love inside Flesh and Blood cosplay to collab with, and I've kind of already done it, so it's a little bit of a cop out, but I'd love to
Mm-hmm.
do more of it. Would be if
Sure.
you're familiar with Matt, aka Snow Coven, who does all of the 3D printed models and swords and
Mm-hmm.
things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So his model for the Teklo pistols behind me, and we kind of collabed basically when I took the model and altered it and put in all the lighting and the steam and added like the transparent barrel and some accessories over time to
Mm,
it. So it was like a mini collab that we did. And I'd love to see a full collab someday where we actually work together, like his
okay.
3D skills and knowledge, and
Yeah.
what I do with the other side of costuming. I think that'd be a really fun collab,
Sure.
and we do talk a lot, so maybe I have to pitch it to him. I guess outside of Flesh and Blood, like my dream would be like Kamui cosplay because she's just insane. The woman is like a
Oh
dynamo
yeah.
and can make anything in the world. I'm pretty sure if people out there don't know who I'm talking about, go look at this person. She's literally a professional cosplayer. Like her job is just doing this now. So she lives my dream.
Yeah. See now. I see now. I feel like I gotta look her up. I mean,
Yeah.
like I feel like that would be like so hard. It is the if you have all these kind of role models or all these kind of people that you look up and say, "Oh my god, this is amazing. This is great." Being able to just pick them out and say, "I love your work. Like, teach me," or like, "Hey, like, let me build this with you or do something." That would be kind of huge. So, y- you know,
Yeah. It
I've
was
always kind
fun.
of struggled or wondered that.
The whole Carolina thing was really
Let's see if
interesting
this is
because
enough.
we yeah, I think you've got me. Yeah, you do. I was like, you
But
either got it or you don't. Either way, you're gonna just like go again.
yep,
So
yep.
good game. Good game.
But so like the Carolina, good game, good game.
Yeah.
The Carolina thing, like how much did you two converse or plan it? Like,
Yeah.
was it just basically like, hey, you make one and I'll make one, or was it like, oh no,
Yeah.
like I want you to kind of take this feel and design, and I'll do this feel and design, or
So Carolina and I are actually pretty good friends, I would say, even though we're competitors and stuff. We're fierce competitors,
sure,
but fierce friends. And we met back in like San Jose way back when. And we've talked ever since. And so at one point earlier in the summer, I said, like, we need to, I think I've been saying it actually for months, we need to do a collab. And so we're doing a collab in Osaka. So we already planned that
okay,
back in like June. I won't say what it is or what the theme is, but we are doing not, I won't call it a pairs costume. They're just themed similarly.
okay,
Um, and
sure,
then as we were rolling into Tampa and realized there wasn't a competition, she said, "Are you going to cosplay? I'm not sure. Like, I might cosplay. Is it, should we do it? I'd love somebody else to, do like cosplay too. So I'm not alone." And I said, "Yeah, actually, I'm thinking I'm going to do
sure,
one still." And so we started talking about what we were each going to do. And originally she was going to do Terra. And I said, "Well, I'm doing Findel's Fighting Spirit because I already started it. It's the original version. So I did the original art, Joseph's art, not the promo." And
mm-hmm,
when I said
mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm.
to her, she kind of thought on it for a while. And then she came back. She said, "Would you mind if I didn't do Terra and I do the new Findel's Fighting Spirit in general? Could we match? Could we be like a tribe?" And I said, "I think that'd be pretty cool." I said,
Sure,
"But I think it'd be cooler if you did the new one so that we're like not just matchy matchy, like you're doing the new, I'm doing the old. It would be
yeah,
like
yeah,
a really
yeah, yeah.
cool matchup." So she said, "Yeah, no, that's awesome." And we coordinated the whole time. Like neither of us instructed each other. We each did our own thing, but we were like sharing what we were planning, what we were doing, asking questions of each other. So it kind of like coordinated, but in
Oh,
our
that's
own
cool.
way of doing our own thing. So that was super fun. And everybody thinks that photo shoot was like really well planned out, but literally I showed up to the convention center and said, "Oh my god, it's so hot, but can we find some bushes to like do a photo shoot at?" And she was like, "Yeah, let's do it." We walked across the street to just like a Marriott or whatever was there and like crouched in the bushes and
Yeah.
we were like asking passersby to take photos of us, like random people walking their dogs.
Well, it did.
Yeah.
It did turn out really, really well. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
like
Well, that's
everything
that's
about it, like it did
all
look
due to her.
super
Like the ones
planned.
of just me, like that look so amazing, were taken by her because Carolina is like a master photog. Like she knows all about like posing and taking amazing photos. She's really talented. And like I am just this idiot who's standing here like, "Ugh, I don't know what to do," like pose me, like I just turn on like
Well, I
my
will say
Reinar brain when
you
it's
guys did
time
an
to
amazing
pose.
job.
Oh, thank you.
Just tell me where to stand and what to do, please.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
Like
well,
just a
it turned
me
out
hold
awesome.
club, you tell me where to stand, I've just got my spear here. I just turned into a brute, and just stand in the bushes. And she had to like literally tell me, "Now do this, turn your head," I'm like, "You might as well just come over here and move me because I have no clue what I'm doing."
Oh, that's great. But
Uh,
no, that's awesome. And again, I mean, I feel bad I've taken enough of your night here. Thank you so much for being a guest
yeah,
and kind of playing a match here. Especially, or I guess like 2.5 matches by the time we kind of got through. So again, appreciate you sticking with us with all
of
technical things.
course.
But let me kind of open the floor to you to plug your channel, Twitter, whatever you want to do, where you're going to be, what events, all that kind of good stuff. Before
Yeah.
we kind of sign off here.
No, thanks for having me. It was super fun. Anybody wants to check out what I'm up to, I'm Max Ferocity on pretty much every platform, even on YouTube. My channel's called Pour the Mold, but you can also look me up under Max Ferocity there under the title channel. Hopefully, I'll be getting some more videos out there soon as to my Osaka build. So that's going to be my next big event that you'll see me at. Will be in Japan in the fall. Really looking forward to that. But if you ever have any questions, my DMs are usually open as long as you're, respectful and you don't want me to build you a whole costume. I'm always happy to answer questions. And I'll also plug the Fab cosplay Discord. So Lynette, who is a fabulous cosplayer and kind of like the original OG cosplayer of Fab, has made a wonderful home for all of us out there. She also has a channel called Shapeshifters of Wraith, where she talks to different cosplayers, asks about their experience, and tries to shine a light on kind of like the behind the scenes of what goes on. And that Fab Discord is just called Fab Cosplay, FAB Cosplay. So if you want more info on that and you can't seem to find it, just ping me on Twitter, Instagram, whatever, and I will lead you there.
Awesome, awesome. Well, again, thank you very much for anybody that's kind of stuck around this long. If you don't already know who we are, Twitter at O_3_Dropcast. You'll find us there. We also have our link to our Discord, all that kind of good stuff. But again, Max, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for kind of
Of
filling
course.
in this week as the other hosts were having technical difficulties and all that good stuff. But thank you again, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us, and we'll catch you next time.